Good evening, everyone. My name is Chrissy, and I would like to welcome you to the Doylestown Bookshop's virtual event series. We are thrilled to welcome back friend and YA author Tiffany Schmidt, along with award-winning author Jen Calonita, as they discuss I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas and Heroes Book 3 in the Royal Academy Rebels series. The authors will be in conversation for about 30 minutes. Following that, they will take questions from you, the viewers. If you would like to submit a question, please click on Ask a Question on your screen and submit your questions there. If you're watching from a phone or tablet, click on the icon with the question mark. If you would like to purchase the author's books from the Doylestown Bookshop, click the button on your screen that says Buy the Books. Now, a little bit about our authors. Tiffany Schmidt is a former 6th grade teacher. She lives in Pennsylvania with her family and spends her time baking cookies, which I can get behind, chasing her sons and puggles around their backyard, and writing the kissing scenes first. Tiffany is the author of the Bookish Boyfriends series, A Date with Darcy, The Boy Next Story, and Talk Nerdy to Me, and now I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas, as well as 4 other books for young adults. Jen Calonita has interviewed everyone from Reese Witherspoon to Justin Timberlake. I was getting caught up on the Justin Timberlake. the only person she's ever wanted to trade places with is Disney Cinderella, and for me, her while she was interviewing Justin. She's the award-winning author of the Royal Academy Rebels and Fairy Tale Reform School series. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm so happy to have you, and Tiffany, congratulations on this latest book. And Jen also.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. I'll be back in for the Q&A.
Great.
All right.
Hi.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know it's not even Halloween, but we'll be doing a little bit of Christmas tonight and a little bit of fairy tales. I'm so excited to be here with Jen Calonita, whose Heroes came out today, the last book in the Fairy Tale Reform School spin-off of Royal Academy Rebels. And then just two weeks ago, Jen?
Yeah.
Had Flynn Rider's books come out, so she has been very, very busy. So 2 books from her. My book,
and show the cover of your book.
Yeah. I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas was supposed to come out tonight, but it's stuck on a cargo ship somewhere. It's 2021. Anything can happen. And one of the things that did happen is that because it's in a lot of bookstore systems as coming out today, and they don't have the actual book, it made everything glitch. So if you had pre-ordered the book prior to today, you're fine. But if you tried to order it today, you probably got an error message. I know there's a buy link below. For me, it's going to tell you to either email the store or call the stores, or it should be fixed tomorrow morning. But as of right now, you can't just click that link for me. You have to either email or call the store, or tomorrow morning. It should be fixed, hopefully. Cross your fingers, but who knows, 2021. But Jen, why don't you tell us a little bit about both of your books, please?
Well, first, can we just point out you have that epic holiday tree behind you? It makes me want to run to my basement and start pulling out all my decorations. And I cannot wait to read I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas. And I feel like, the delay could be a great thing. I love reading a holiday book and kicking off the season. So in a few weeks, it'll be right before, Halloween. And I'm going to dive right in and want to pull out all my holiday decorations. So I think it's going to be a win-win.
That is very true. I do have on my Hallmark Christmas movie shirt. I had on my Jingle Bell earrings earlier, but then realized that since the microphone is attached to my AirPods, it was probably not a good idea to have bells there. So you're welcome for making that decision. But yes, Jen, tell us about yours.
So mine are, one is the Lost Legends is the kickoff of the Lost Legends series. It is a series of books from Disney about Disney's most impish rogues, young heroes before they're heroes. And Flynn is the first book in the series. And this is all about Eugene Fitzherbert / Flynn Rider. his origin story. He's 12 years old in this. The whole story kind of stemmed from the idea that takes place in Tangled. You remember that scene? I know you do, because you and I are huge Disney people, but remember that scene in Tangled right after Flynn and Rapunzel get out of the cave? They have not been washed away. And he tells Rapunzel that his real name is Eugene Fitzherbert, and the name came from a book he used to read in the orphanage. So this is that story of how it all began. It's Eugene in the orphanage, growing up with his best friend, Arnwaldo Schnitz, who readers will know from Tangled the series, if they're Tangled the series fans. That is Lance Strongbow. And I'm like so excited to get to tell Eugene's story and pull in all these familiar Tangled characters. So that's book one, and it's a busy month. So today, Heroes comes out, and Heroes, as you mentioned, is book 3 in the Royal Academy Rebels series, which is a crossover sister series to Fairy Tale Reform School. What's really fun about this one, you and I were saying before we started, I kind of feel like this one can stand on its own. You don't have to have read Misfits or Outlaws. It really is a mashup of Fairy Tale Reform School and Royal Academy. As a matter of fact, it's the first time there's been 2 characters on one of the covers, and it's Devon, who is a very reluctant, not your typical princess. And then the other person a lot of people think is Gilly from Fairy Tale Reform School. It's actually her younger sister, Anna. So if you've read Fairy Tale Reform School, you know Gilly has a younger sister who is a little bit problematic and gets in trouble and gets sentenced to Fairy Tale Reform School. So she is teaming up with Devon in this book. And extra special in the back of this book is a Fairy Tale Reform School short story written just for this book. And it's got to do with the kids being on, I kind of call it like magical Zoom school. They're on their mini magical scrolls, and they're having a bonding session, even though they're only supposed to use their scrolls for schoolwork. So those are mine. But tell me about I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas, which I think is the best title I've ever heard.
Oh, thank you. I did not come up with it. It was originally All I Want for Christmas is Drew, and then that was a late change, but I love it so much. So I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas is kind of my ode to Hallmark Christmas movies. And I say it's what happened if you took Dance Academy or Center Stage and set it at a ski slope at Christmas time. It is about Noelle, a young ballerina who is obsessed with Christmas. And this Christmas, nothing is going right. All of her plans are failing. She's a freshman in high school. Everyone has no time, or they feel too old for all of their holiday traditions. At the same time, she's secretly applying to go to this prestigious dance academy, and she's scared to tell her dad that she's doing that, and her friends. And when everything falls apart, she accepts this babysitting job with a family that she loves to babysit their kids over Christmas break up at their ski lodge. And one of the things she loves about this family is that the stepson attends the school. And she's never met him, but his dance photos are over the house, and she's watched every interview with him on social media. And she has this crush on this idea of this person that she thinks Wyatt is. And little does anyone know, Wyatt plans to surprise his family for Christmas. So he shows up, she's there, he's got a secret of his own, and he's not the person she thought he would be, and all sorts of ski slope hijinks ensue. But it's fun and escapist and full of everything Christmassy that I could pack inside.
I love this. This is like the holiday book of my dreams. I love a good holiday book. Do you have some favorite holiday books you've read?
I just read, and I had put it off, and I don't know why, In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, and I loved it so much. I just flew through it.
Yeah.
It's so good, and that is an adult book. I also love Let It Snow is a favorite. I know I'm blanking on some. This is a great anthology. It's Stephanie Perkins, My True Love Gave to Me. This is the British cover because I just loved it so much. I needed this version.
That's beautiful.
And it's not technically a Christmas book, but Stephanie Kate Jones' Prince in Disguise, which has that winter feel. And those are definitely some of my favorites. There are a bunch more coming out this fall, so I'm excited to read some more. But I love a good Christmas read.
Well, you write romance so well. I mean, I was trying to think back before we got on how long we've known each other. And this has been the question of the week because I actually did something with Stephanie Kate Strom earlier this week, and we were
Mhm.
trying to remember when she and I met. But you and I think, go even further back. Did we do a school visit together for your first book?
My first book had come out the day before. It was my first school visit ever. So this was way back in 2013 for Send Me a Sign. And I showed up and the twins were not even two. I was so out of my element and I showed up and I was like, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. And the other author with us, member, went to the wrong school. And so things were a little bit flustered. And it was Ridley High School, which I love, one of my favorite schools I've ever visited. And that day felt like so much magic. You were so calming and so wonderful and kindly went first. And, I feel like I ended the day feeling like maybe I could do this author thing because I had such bad imposter syndrome walking in. But I also felt like I left the day with this like kindred spirit. Like I was like, this is the person I want in my life. If all authors are like this, like I am never going to stop doing this job.
You're
But
too
yeah, so
kind.
that was a really long time ago.
You were so, I mean, everybody should know this. You were so polished that day. Like to me, I was like, oh my goodness, she's a public speaker. She's definitely a teacher. Like you just commanded the room. You were so good right off the bat. And I was in awe of you that day. And we have met up over the years at events.
Mhm.
And I blurbed one of your books a few years back.
You
I think it was
did.
Bright Before Sunrise, right?
It was.
And I
Yep.
just you write romance so well. You write kissing scenes so well. So where did this book come from? Where did I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas come from?
I think I started writing this book in March 2020. And which the world shut down. My kids' school shut down and they did not go back. And essentially that spring was when I was writing this book. And, it always would have been a cozy Christmas read, but I think because of the way the world was right then, and because of my own schedule, I actually wrote a lot of this book at like 3 a.m. Because I had a toddler with no preschool anymore. The twins had a short day of school on Zoom, and it was the time I had. And it needed to be escapist and lovely and happy in order for me to really want to be up at 3 a.m, or up at 1 a.m. and live in this world. So I think more than any other book, I was just like, this needs to be a book that is just happy, that is full of everything happy I can make it, every cozy feeling I can shove in it, because the world felt so uncertain then. And so it was just the best parts of a holiday movie, the best parts of the holiday season, that feeling of lying under a Christmas tree or, cupping a cup of cocoa when you come in with cold fingers, and how do I package that in book form? So, that's where I was coming from. Your books, however, you were wrapping up almost 2 series with heroes, right? You had a lot of crossover, and it was really fun to read that and to see you bring in these fan favorites from this other series and join them together. And like you said, I feel like people could come into the series for the first time here and then go back and want to know what happened to bring them here. But I was so curious when you were writing this, did you always plan it this way? Was this a structure you had from when you wrote Flunked, or was it something that came up organically?
Well, it was funny because when I started the Fairy Tale Reform School series, sometimes as authors, I don't know if you do this, but you're like writing a big scene. And I always think to myself, like, well, in my town, there could be a dozen schools in this town, and there's like 5 elementary schools. So in my head, I was like, well, there's not just a Fairy Tale Reform School. There is a school called Jack of All Trades, which Gilly used to go to, which teaches her how to be a cobbler. And then I thought, oh, there has to be a Royal Academy. I mean, we're talking about princesses. So I created this Royal Academy, and then I started getting questions. Well, who goes to Royal Academy? How do you get into Royal Academy? Who are these students? And so then we talked about like doing a new crossover series that was set in the same kingdom, had some of the same characters that crossed back and forth, but was set in an entirely new school. And the series was a little bit behind Fairy Tale Reform School. So what lucked out was Cursed was the last book in the Fairy Tale Reform School series. It involves a big curse. And Heroes was just coming up, and I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we pick up Heroes right after the curse? This curse in Fantasia destroys part of Fairy Tale Reform School. It messes up a lot of stuff in the kingdom. I was writing it like you at the beginning of the lockdown, and I thought the world is changing so much, but I want there to be hope. And so I thought, well, you know, if the Fairy Tale Reform School has been kind of destroyed, wouldn't it be cool if those kids came and were housed at Royal Academy? And how would the Royal Academy kids react to these kids who are very different from themselves, but then learn that perhaps there's a lot to learn from this new group of students? And so I thought it would be fun to take Gilly, who had graduated in a way, her younger sister, and bring her in to go toe-to-toe with Devin, the magical creature caretaker in training. She wants to be like a magical vet, and have them go toe-to-toe and solve a big villain threat that's happening to the kingdom. So like you, my kids were home that spring. My kids are older than yours, so I so felt for you at the time. I remember when I would check in with you, you'd be doing these epic projects, and I'd be like, where did you get that? Where'd you get that book? And mine were older, but I felt like you always had your kids out on an adventure. And I'm like, how is she writing? Because you were doing so many amazing things. So to know you were up at like 3 a.m. writing is incredible. I just wrote early in the morning. I felt like before everybody got on Zoom school was the only way I could function, because I was so tired by the end of the day with everybody home, like trying to come up with stuff for everybody to do. And I don't know about you, but I lost my office during the pandemic because now there was 4 people working from home instead of 1. And my new office is this like alcove where I am right now that has a desk and everything, but my husband is still working from home. So he has my office because he had a lot of Zooms, and I moved into this tiny little space in between rooms. Where are you? Where do you usually work?
I'm in my office now, which I did not have for most of the pandemic. I could have it at 3 a.m. till 5 a.m. because no one else was awake. But my husband was in here during the days, most of the days, also because it's on the top floor of our house and our children are not quiet. But when they just went back to school in person this September, so they were home all last year, we took what we had called the Lego room, and it was just essentially a room with doors that was supposed to be the home office. And we were like, you know what? You know, the youngest is no longer going to choke on a Lego. You don't need a special room for this. And we moved their Legos into the playroom, and now Matt has his own office downstairs. But it's funny now that they're in school and he's downstairs and the puppy's downstairs. I don't want to work in my office. It feels lonely. Like it feels like I'm being sent to my room. So I feel like these days I end up actually working on our kitchen table, because then I get, you know, Thea, the puppy, next to me, and I can, you know, call over to him, and, you know, so, but yeah, I think I'll be back here eventually.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because now that everybody is back to school in my house, and my husband is still working from home some days a week, I find the house feels quiet. Whereas for 15 years, I always worked from home by myself with just the dogs, and it was ideal. But now I find I will go sit. We have this great new little coffee shop in town, and I'll go right there for a few hours, because I kind of miss the noise as much as it drove me crazy during the pandemic. Now I'm like, oh, it's really quiet to write like this. Like I need to be somewhere else. So it is funny. Like I guess we're all still getting used to this new normal. So
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think we have to talk some holiday stuff, because the tree behind you just has me dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas. And I want to ask you some holiday questions. Do you have a favorite holiday movie?
Elf. I mean, it doesn't get better than Elf. You know, I don't think it's just a Christmas movie. You can watch it anytime during the year, but that is my favorite. What is yours?
I love
Do you
Elf
have a
too.
favorite?
I love Elf, but every year I have to watch Love Actually. I feel like I can't get through the holiday season without Love Actually. I love It's a Wonderful Life. I feel like is a must every Christmas Eve. Preacher's Wife. I actually love that version with Whitney Houston. But like my go-to when I'm like wrapping is The Holiday with Cameron Diaz and Kate Winslet and Jack Black and Jude Law is like one of my favorites. And sometimes it's on in like July and I still have to watch. I just love it so much.
I actually really loved the Let It Snow movie that came out last year, based on the book, and it's, what is it, Maureen Johnson, Lauren Myracle, and John Green, I think. Hopefully I'm right. But that was a Netflix movie that I think came out a year or two ago, and I really loved that one too. So if you've not seen that, add that to your watch list.
And Dash and Lily, I thought that was really good. That was on Netflix as well, which was set during holiday time, which was so festive and nice. What about a holiday song? Do you have a favorite holiday song?
This is a hard one for me. I do love a good joy. I have a very hard time with this. It changes constantly. The Nutcracker soundtrack I listen to every day writing this book because Noelle is a ballerina and she's dancing to the Nutcracker. And oftentimes my youngest, who never sleeps, would sneak in at 3 a.m. and like sleep in my office or just to be near me, or I'd end up typing in his bed. And he now sleeps to the Nutcracker soundtrack. So every night when he goes to bed, we have to turn on, not the soundtrack, but the Nutcracker composition score, whatever, the ballet, the music behind it. But so that has become, something that I think I probably know every note in the whole thing because I've listened to it for 2 years. But I love a good Christmas song. I do not like Christmas shoes. I don't either. Designed just to make you cry is an instant pass from me. Christmas Donkey, not a fan. But pretty much anything else.
I like Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, the Judy Garland version that was used in Meet Me in St. Louis, because it's a movie I watched every Christmas with my grandmother. It was her favorite. So when it does come on, like my Spotify or something, I like everybody in the house goes, because like I usually do get a little misty about it because I miss my grandmother and it was like our song. It was our song, but they all pause like here we go. But I do love it so much. But and then Mariah Carey, I feel like you could just like dance along in the house to any like Mariah Carey Christmas song. But I did want to ask you though, because we're talking about the Nutcracker. Were you a dancer growing up, a ballerina, or you just love ballet?
I did take ballet for a couple years. I even have like one of my little tutus in the other room. It had a cat face on it, and because this was in the 80s and I'm me, it has a cat face with blue eyeshadow and blush because I was left unattended with the stage makeup and decided to decorate my tutu. But I was both not good at ballet because I cannot even clap to a beat. I do not know my left from my right. But also there was a bit of an incident in my last dance recital where, I was maybe 5 or 6, and we, got paraded out onto the stage and we were supposed to stand on our tape X, and someone else was standing on mine. And I very politely asked them to move, and they did not. And I asked again, and they did not. And I gave them a little push, and they pushed back. And as the curtains were opening, there is like little me in a tutu going boom and hitting this little girl in a kitty cat tutu, and she's sliding across the stage on her butt, and that was the end of my ballet career. So
does your family have that on video? Because that would be amazing.
Oh yes, they do. They do. Of course they do. But then the curtains close very quickly, and when they open again, we are all in our spots, and I felt very vindicated because I am in that spot and she is elsewhere. So.
I love that. I was a dancer all growing up. I danced competitively. I did not, I was not great with point, but I do remember like my mom still gets so aggravated because we would do these like, every year you would take a photo just like you do in school, but in one of your costumes for the dance recital. And I do remember I was 8 and we had a dance recital. My best friend was in the same number as me. We had this cute, like, little polka dot outfit, and we had tap shoes. And the tap shoes that year had to be sprayed black, but they were normally tan. Like they would do this to you every year. Like, we're going to spray them white. We're going to spray them tan.
Right.
And so my dad had sprayed my tap shoes black, and my mom was so afraid that I was going to scuff them at the photo. She made me wear regular shoes for the picture, but my best friend Joyce was allowed to wear the tap shoes. And like, it will still come up sometimes. And she's like, are you going to bring this up again, that I wouldn't let you wear the tap shoes? But I always remember it because it didn't look right with the costume. Like, I'm posed like this.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, I'm not wearing tap shoes. So it still bothers me to this day. The things that you think about and get you crazy.
Right. The whole point of tap is the shoe.
But I mean, I get it now as a parent. You're like, okay, I spray painted these painted these shoes. They have to make it to next week. We can't spray paint them again. But like at the time, like, it still irritates me because I'm like, everybody else had them on. So yeah, that was the thing. But we have a few more minutes.
I want to ask actually about Flynn and writing this. And you know, because it's a Disney book, because it's a Disney property, and you had to fit it within the framework of the show and the movie, what does that writing process look like? How much conversation is there? And, you know, when you're writing within an existing property, how does that kind of collaboration, because it's not, you know, like this, where you are, yes, you're using familiar fairy tales, but you can put whatever spin on it you want.
You know, in a way, I find I actually really I love the system now that goes along with these books, and I find myself using it with like all my books. I love that I can bring my ideas to Disney and say, what do you think, before I sit down and start writing? Because I don't know about you, but like having done so many books in the beginning, it used to be like, here's the idea. And then you would take the idea and run with it. And then you would go back and do revisions. And sometimes my editor would be like, I thought you were going to go this way. Maybe we'll rework it. So the process with Disney is so great to me because I know the concept, like I know where I want to go, and then I can run it by them before I begin, and also make sure I'm being really true to the character. And the great thing about Flynn is that since the Tangled, the series, is considered canon, so it's part of the Tangled universe in the world, I was put in touch with Chris Sonnenberg, who is the creator of Tangled, the series, and I had him as this amazing resource. I dedicated the book to him because anytime I had a question, he could answer it. Like, I remember when I started writing, I was like, how old is Flynn? You know, and how much, he's actually 6 years older than Rapunzel. So like, he could answer all those questions. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I mean, fairy tale time's different. Age is just a number. But he could, you know, tell me about maps, how the kingdom was laid out. The book, The Tales of Flynn Rider, that Flynn talks about in Tangled and is part of this book. The way Chris explained it to me was, you have to think of it more like, almost like a comic book series. These were serialized stories that there was one after another. And so that's why every chapter in the book opens with a different Flynn Rider quote from a different Flynn Rider book. And it kind of ties into the chapter. And so that was really fun. It was fun to come up with.
That was really fun. Now, you've written a couple Disney books. I see Go the Distance behind you, a New York Times best-selling book that is Hercules from Meg's point of view. Exciting. Yes, it's an accomplishment. And you've done other twisted tales. You've done what? Tell me about the Frozen and Snow White. Right?
Yeah, Conceal Don't Feel, which was Frozen, and Mira Mira, which was Snow White. And that's part of the Twisted Tales series. There is 4 authors so far who have worked on these books, and we've all tackled it in a different way, whether you've wanted like a prequel, a sequel, a whole new path, or just done something entirely different with one character. And so for Go the Distance, which just came out this spring, I decided to focus on Meg and what it would be like if Meg had to become a god in order to stay with Hercules. Because at the end of the movie, you know, Hercules spends the whole movie trying to become a god. And then at the very end, he says to Zeus, but I'm going to stay on Earth and be with Meg. And it never sat right with me. I just thought, why would he say yes? It's Zeus. Zeus can be really cranky. So my idea was that he says no, and then Meg has to go on a quest to become a god if she wants to be up on Mount Olympus and be with Wonder Boy. So it's fun. It's fun coming up with those twists too, and working with Disney, making sure I'm being true to the characters and the universe before I jump in. But you and I are huge Disney fans. We have talked about Disney trips so many times.
I know.
Texting each other about run Disney races.
No Disney. Yeah.
I know. I mean, it is. And now the 50th is here.
I cannot wait to see Kite Tales, the new show at Animal Kingdom, which is these big bumbling kites that just kind of crash on purpose. And it looks so charming and adorable and ridiculous. But if you could write about any Disney property, what would it be? Or even like, what is your all-time favorite Disney character?
I mean, it's Anna and Elsa. I just always loved Frozen. From the minute it came out, I ran a Run Disney half marathon dressed as Anna years ago before I found out I was doing the Twisted Tale. I, would drag the family around the park. I have two boys. They're, they're now almost 13 and 17, and I would drag them and make them wait online to meet Anna and Elsa for me. So that to me is still such a moment for me that I got to work on that book, that I get to work on that, those characters. What about you? If you could write about any Disney character, who would you write about?
Well, Anna is my favorite princess. I remember the first time we watched Frozen, my mom was over and the twins were we. And we got to that part where Anna is up in bed and she's like, the sky is awake, so I'm awake. And my mom turned to me and was like, oh, so this is a movie about you. And I just love her. I love her character so much. I love it even more in Frozen 2 when, she's stripped from all these supports and has to do the next right thing. And I start crying every time. But the other property I really, really love is Big Hero 6. And I don't know if that's because I actually started as an engineer and have such an interest in STEM, but I love that property. And I would love to see them do something with like Go-Go or Honey Lemon or any of them. Baymax he's my favorite. So I would love to see them do something with that.
That's a great idea. And they need, some Big Hero 6 stuff in the parks too, I think. Right?
They do. They used to have the meet and greet, the picture thing, but I think with all that cut, that's gone. So So before we get to questions, can I ask one more, Chrissy, or no?
Please, yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask, what was your favorite thing you researched writing this series? Because there's so much fun world building, or your just favorite thing you came up with. Like, I love the Charmachinos, and there's just so many like charming aspects of this world. So I was curious, what was your favorite research or world building?
That might be my favorite. So in Royal Academy, because it's a school for royals and it's princesses and princes, and they're always trying to look their best at school. There is basically like a mall underneath the school. And for heroes, a new coffee shop opens that's reminiscent of a coffee chain you might know. And they have these Charmachinos, and you go to the shop and they're magical. So you can make a wish on the drink and it'll come true for a few seconds. So you could wind up with a unicorn or like the prince of your dreams. But if it's not a good wish, things backfire. That was just so much fun. And, was part of the fun of, being on lockdown, trying to think of really fun things that would build me up. And then there's baby gargoyles in this book that are supposed to be evil, but they remind me of Grogu. So they kind of stemmed from him. I love, Baby Yoda. So
that's really fun.
Who doesn't love Baby Yoda?
All my research for Wyatt Christmas who doesn't in the spring. So it was all very off season. But one of the things we did as a family was a gingerbread house contest, because that's a scene in the book. So I ordered in April these gingerbread house kits. And they came and they were all smashed because they were months old, and then of course I'm Googling how do I fix it, and hot glue. There's a tip for you all. Hot glue works wonders on gingerbread houses. But it ended up being so fun. It was Easter weekend and we're decorating gingerbread houses, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the book is when the characters do that, and it gets a little too competitive. But that was a fun piece of research.
I love that.
All right. Well, we have some questions from our viewers, and you can still submit questions if you would like to. Okay, the first one, and this is for both of you, Tiffany, I'll have you answer first, is from Isa. I hope I'm saying that correctly, Isa. Isa is a middle school student, and Isa would like to know what inspired you to write.
I have always been a writer. Even when I was little, I was always filling notebooks. A lot of times I would fill notebooks about the books I was going to write, not necessarily actually get around to writing them. I think it is how I process the world, is kind of thinking through the what ifs, and what if this happened, and how would life be different if this happened. And through writing down these stories and creating these characters in these alternate worlds is kind of how I work things out, but also how I keep myself entertained. So I've always kind of been that storyteller. Jen, what about you?
I always liked to write, but I didn't anticipate that I would write a book. I really thought I was going to spend my whole career writing for magazines or newspapers. And so the first years in my career, that's what I did. I was an entertainment editor at a teen magazine, and it inspired my first series, Secrets of My Hollywood Life, which is about a young celebrity who has grown up in Hollywood in front of the camera and is never quite certain if she likes it or she only likes it because it's something she's done since she was 2. And that was really inspired by all the teens I interviewed at Teen People. And I thought that would make a really fun book, but I had never written one. So I set out to meet an editor and kind of figure out how I could write this book. And it all took off from there.
Okay. This is for Jen. What inspired you to write the Flynn Rider book specifically?
Well, I feel like when you're talking about young Disney heroes and wanting to know their backstory, Flynn is probably one I really wanted to know where he came from. And the line in Tangled where he talks about being a kid in an orphanage and adopting this new persona and name for himself just really appealed to me. I wanted to know what he was like before we met him in Tangled, because in Tangled, the series, we see what he's like after the movie. What was he like long before the movie? And that just was too much fun to pass up.
Okay, and this is also from Autumn, who asked the previous question. Tiffany, I'll have you go first. This is for both of you. Do you make your childhood fantasies that you dreamed of come to life in your books?
Before I answer, I do want to say Jen and I have 2 copies of Heroes, and once they arrive, we'll have 2 copies of Wyatt that we are going to give away. One to someone who asks the question today. So if you have not asked, you should do that. And one to someone who watches the recording after it's posted. So if you don't win today, you can go watch the recording and comment there and get a second chance. So want to mention that. And as for do I make my child's fantasies come true? I mean, maybe a little bit. Like I would love to be an actual ballerina who had skill and knew her right from left and, got to wear point shoes. I find that fascinating and adorable and amazing. And having done so much research on ballet, I'm in awe of the amount of skill and drive and training it takes to reach that level. Even more so, I think this is true of my Bookish Boyfriends series. I only have 2 of them within reach, but there's 4 of these. There's A Date with Darcy, The Boy Next Story, Talk Nerdy to Me, and then Get a Clue. And these books take place in a high school where whatever book they're studying in English class leads over into the main character's life. Each book has a different main character. And I was a nerdy, bookish kid, and the idea of getting to date a real life Mr. Darcy or Gilbert Blythe or Lori from Little Women, that would have been high school me's dream. I mean, it would have been adult me's dream too. So these were super fun to write because I got to tackle some of my favorite wishes. So yeah, a little bit, absolutely. There's some wish fulfillment in there.
I find that I don't know about childhood wish fulfillment, but I always was obsessed with fairy tales as a kid. I did always want new endings for a lot of the fairy tales, which is where fairy tale reform school comes from. The idea that the wicked stepmother could become good and teach kids on the path to wickedness how to behave. But I think sometimes when ideas come to me now, it's things that I wish I had when I was a kid. So, Tiffany was showing you the Bookish Boyfriends books. And this is the retake. This came out earlier this year. This is about a girl who discovers a time travel app on her phone and uses it to go back to social media posts from her past to redo things and get them right. And my God, I would have loved that. Like I would even love it now sometimes to go back and do that. And I'm working on a book now called 12 to 22, which comes out next spring, summer. And that is kind of like my ode to 13 going on 30. The idea that you could be 12 today and wake up tomorrow morning and be 22. And what would your life look like if it's the life you want at 12? How would that look? So that is always fun to me. Like I would have loved that.
Okay, and then there's a question from Joanna for both of you. Tiffany, actually, Joan, we'll have you go first on this one. What are what are both of your favorite characters that you have written?
I love Gilly from Fairy Tale Reform School. I just think she's sassy. She has a lot of growing up to do, and I feel like she changes so much and grows over the course of the series, which I really enjoy because I think we all grow as we learn and experience things. And so she's probably one of my favorites. And then Flynn Rider. It's just so much fun to hear his voice in my head when you're writing. So I've really loved that as well.
I just leaned and grabbed my other books in the series. Mary in Date with Darcy is so much like me in that she gets lost in her head, and she's a huge daydreamer, big heart, big imagination. Things seem bigger in her head than often they are in reality, and I love that about her. And then the last Bookish Boyfriends, Get a Clue. I loved Huck. He is a character that I didn't originally plan to have his own story, but he came on the page in Boy Next Story and just stole it and stole my heart. And he has a big curiosity. He is full of energy, full of life, full of, just love and affection for people, but also has a really busy mind. Constantly asking questions, doubting himself, trying to figure things out. And I just really loved his character too. He was a lot of fun to write.
Okay, and a question from AB for both of you. Tiffany, we'll have you go first. Have you ever considered making a graphic novel?
Interestingly enough, in about a week, I am starting a graphic novel course. So who knows? I make no promises, but the twins have been asking for years. And Drew Brockenberg, who does Castronauts, is offering a graphic novel course that it's like, I think, a 6-week course where we'll spend a couple hours a week kind of breaking it down and what goes into it. And we've done a 2-hour seminar so far, and I'm so pumped for it. So I make no promises. I have not written a word of a graphic novel, but it's something I'm really interested in because I've spent so much time reading them recently, and I think it's such a cool storytelling format. I know initially there was some pushback from, other parents I met about like, well, they're not reading. And I'm like, no. Not only are they reading, and the language that gets used in graphic novels is often more advanced than what they'd be reading at books in their levels, but they're also having to synthesize information from both the picture and the text. And it is a higher level order of thinking. And I just think that the synthesis of that is fascinating to me. Absolutely let your kids read graphic novels. It's important. It is a great form of reading, and it is reading. And I would love to explore that more. My soapbox moment.
I'm so glad you said that.
You sounded like a teacher, but it's so true. It's also true. I mean, it's just important that kids read whatever they're reading. I mean, there are some nights I'll hand my kids like a sports magazine or a graphic novel and be like, I just want you to read. That's the more you read, the better you read, the better you read, the better you write. I really believe that goes hand in hand. And I would love to do a graphic novel. I know some of the Twisted Tale books are actually being turned into graphic novels. Ooh. And Stephanie Kate Strom is actually doing the first two. The first one is Part of Your World. And I don't remember the second one, but she's doing those based on books that Liz Braswell did. But I think it would be amazing to do. I have tried my hand at it before, and it is hard. It is very hard. Mm-hmm. I had a series called VIP, I'm With the Band, where the main character liked to draw comics. And so we have some illustrated comic book pages in the books. And the one thing I had to learn was like to shrink my like talk bubble. Like you have to say so much in so few words sometimes. And you really got to figure out what pictures are going to go with the dialogue. And it's fascinating to me. I can't wait to hear what you learned from that course.
I will share.
And our last question from Shannon. Oh, not our last one. We had a few more come in. All right. Well, we'll still do Shannon's question here. Good. For both of you. It's a two-part question. What challenges did the pandemic bring to the writing process? And did that shutdown make it easier or harder to focus on writing? Tiffany, let's hear from you first.
For me, I don't think any part of it has been easy. This is my third book coming out during the pandemic, and Jen, I think this is your fourth. I am typically a book a year writer, where I put out one book a year, and it just ended up being, a quirky twist of fate that I ended up with 3 books this year. Pandemics are not good for book sales for mid-list authors. You lose that discoverability. People aren't in bookstores as much, and finding books on shelves and talking to booksellers and getting hand sold. When I first signed on the deadline for Wyatt Christmas, my big fear was, how was I going to juggle writing that book with all the promo I was supposed to be doing for Talk Nerdy to Me, because I'd had so much travel scheduled, different book events and conferences, and all of that got canceled. And there isn't really a replacement for that sort of promotion. And I missed that. And all of these books have kind of felt like they came out into a void where you're not talking to your readers. I mean, even now I'm talking to you, but I can't see if jokes are landing. I can't see your reaction. I can't see what parts you're nodding about. And I really miss that. I miss hearing from readers about, this book spoke to me, or I saw myself in it, and you get some of that on social media, but it's not the same. The energy is not the same. That has been really hard. That has been incredibly tricky. It's harder to psych up to promote a book and have to feel like all I'm doing is shouting online, like, buy my book, please don't forget about my book. Where before the events would do a lot of that. Some authors may have had a very different experience. I know some that have loved the kind of slowdown, but for me, it's been very hard. And I know Jen has pivoted so well and done some really creative things, and that's just been harder. I've also had, these 3 little guys home, but for me, it's not been my favorite. It's certainly not something to complain about because it's a pandemic, but it has not been easy.
Yeah, I like Tiffany, 4 books out so far in the pandemic, and some I've been really lucky that readers have found, and some that I absolutely love, it's been harder to get people to learn about those books. And I think the thing I miss the most is school visits, because I was doing so many school visits and touring so much before the pandemic. And I think a lot of times you could talk about a book and you could tell somebody, oh, you got to read this book, it's great. But when you have the author in front of you, psyching you up, telling you all these amazing things that they're going to read about when they open up this book, there's an impact there. And so the virtual visits are wonderful, and I always appreciate it when a school wants to have me on, but I think there's a little bit of fatigue, and I just don't know if I'm, like Tiffany said, I don't know if I'm connecting as well as I would in person, but we do the best we can. We try to do some fun new things. My kids got me on TikTok. Tiffany and I have talked about this at length. We're both trying to figure out TikTok.
Jen
and
is very
sometimes they work
successful on
and
TikTok.
sometimes they don't. so it depends, but we just keep trying. We just, we love what we do, and we want readers to connect with these characters that we've created the way we've connected, and we hope they can find themselves in the story.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
appreciate everyone that came out tonight. It's, and one of the things I just have to shout out that Jen has done so well is she has done this really adorable series of events that I know the twins love to go to, which is called Baking with the Books, where she has done a live cooking of some dish that correlates to the book. So what are you doing? Are you doing one for Heroes? Is it going to be Charmachinos?
I did a Charmachinos one, strangely enough, at the beginning of the pandemic. I was like, oh, it's a preview to Heroes, but maybe I should bring it back. But I was thinking we should do one for I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas, because we could come up with some cool, we need to come up with a holiday recipe
Christmas
and do
cookies.
that. That needs to be the next one. We will talk about that. Let's get that going.
All right.
Oh my goodness. And I can speak to the, Zoom fatigue people have. Imagine if you're still working from home and you're in meetings all day, it's a lot to ask. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it is, to have someone stay on their computer and watch a virtual event. And I've seen a flux in the numbers for our events too. And nothing replaces that connection you get with readers when they're in front of you. But it is nice that we have this technology so we could all pivot and make it work.
Absolutely.
And, we're fortunate to be able to do this and keep it going. But yes, we look forward to in person again too. We really do. All right. So from Joanna, for both of you.
And Chrissy, we are going to do some sort of either sidewalk signing or something in the store for Wyatt Christmas as we get closer to the Christmas season, correct? So
absolutely.
Date forthcoming, but there will be a time that it won't be a big event, but you'll be able to drive by and get your book signed, and I'll smile at you behind my mask. But that will be coming.
Definitely. I feel like we should have cookies and hot cocoa or something, but it'll be fun.
That.
Yeah. Okay. So from Joanna, for both of you, Tiffany, will have you go first. How long does it take you to write a book typically? How long does it take?
It varies entirely by book. This one was probably my fastest, even despite everything, just because that's how the deadlines lined up. And it was 3.5 months. So it was a fast book for me. My sweet spot is I like 5 to 6 months. But other books have taken almost a full year. So it just depends on the project.
Just like Tiffany, it depends on the project. It depends on the deadline. Things definitely shifted during the pandemic. So there were certain books that I had more time with. There were certain books I had less time with. But ideally, I would love 5 or 6 months to craft a story, because start to finish, it could take a year to 2 years before the book is published. So, sometimes you're talking about a book you haven't worked on in 2 years. So.
Chrissy, I don't think your mic is working.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
I was muted. Sorry about that. All right.
There you are.
Same.
Okay. So we have a question from Lucas, and Jen, I'll have you go first. This is for both of you. How do you balance having dialogue that is natural and realistic, but also drives the plot? Do you find some characters easier or harder to achieve that balance with?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would also say what really helps me with dialogue, and I know this doesn't necessarily answer your question, but when I'm rereading a book that I've worked on, if I read it out loud and read it back to myself, I can see if the dialogue feels natural, if it fits the character, if I have too much dialogue, if I'm not explaining the situation well enough, because finding that balance between dialogue and everything else going on around the character is it can be difficult sometimes. So I like to read everything aloud and figure out if my dialogue is working or not. I know that's not exactly what you asked, but that's kind of how I look at it. Tiffany?
I was going to say the exact same thing, that when I'm checking a dialogue to see if it feels authentic to me and gets across what I need to, I read it out loud. And dialogue on the page doesn't match how we actually talk, because you edit out all the ums and likes and pauses.
Yes.
And the times we repeat ourselves in person to kind of distill it down, but you can still tell if it feels authentic or not. Some characters' voices do feel more natural to me, but generally by the end of a book, I've gotten to know the characters so well that the dialogue is the easiest part for me to write. And then I go back and edit the beginning to match that, knowing those characters as well as I do.
Okay, we have another one from Isa. Were the characters, this is for both of you, Tiffany, we'll have you go first. Were the characters in any of your books that you've written inspired by a real person or people?
No, I wouldn't do that to anyone because you have to make characters flawed in order to make them interesting, and everyone I know in real life is perfect. So no, I would never do that to them, to put them in a book. I will say that a dear family friend and our youngest babysitter did go to a residential ballet school for a few years and is a phenomenal dancer. And Haley, if you're watching, thank you. I tapped her for so many questions about her experiences, and I would just truly send her a list of questions and she would send back answers, or I would send them to her and we'd get on FaceTime. And even sometimes I'd be like, can you demonstrate this dance move for me? Because I need to see what it looks like. And she was incredibly valuable. I could not have written this book without her. But no, it's absolutely not her. She is not that character. So again, everyone I know in real life is perfect, and my characters are very flawed.
Same. I'm going to steal that answer. Same. I mean, I will say that there's characters do certain things in some of my books that are inspired by things other people have done, but no one character is anyone I know. I wouldn't do that. But there are some similarities. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, we're at our last question. It is for both of you, and Jen, I'll have you go first. What are your favorite books?
My favorite books to read, I mean, I feel like it's ever changing. Let's say this fall alone, I just read the second book in Jen Lynn Barnes' series, the Hawthorne Legacy. It's a YA. I love it. It's like a teen Knives Out with really cute, mysterious, wealthy brothers vying for the main character's attention. That was like just a joy to read this fall. I love, for adult books, I love Ellen Hildebrand. And so I really enjoyed Golden Girl this summer. I'm trying to get into a spooky state of mind. So I just picked up Ghost Squad by, I believe it's Claribel Ortega, which looks like a cross between Stranger Things and Coco, which I thought would be a lot of fun to read. And I love anything by Lindsay Curry, who does spooky middle grade really well. And her latest is What Lives in the Woods. And I'm a little terrified to read it, but I have it already, and I'm going to read it when it's light out.
I actually wrote down some titles because every time I get asked this, my mind goes completely blank, and I'm like, I've never read a book ever. So Allie Carter, I love her. Everything she writes, I want to read. Same with Stephanie Kate Strom. Same with Jen. Some of my favorites recently, kind of a cheesy love story by Lauren Morrill. It's fabulous. It's funny. It's escapist. Cemetery Boys, which is, beautiful. Funny, but it's deeper and lovely. I loved that one. And then in middle grade, I love the Nevermore series, the Trials of Morgan Crow, those books. The twins and I are obsessed. I cannot get the next one fast enough. So those have been some of my favorites recently.
We did have one more come in that I do want to ask. Autumn asked both of you, do you have fictional crushes?
The Hawthorne boys. I'm telling you, you have to read the Hawthorne Legacy by Jen Barnes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not sure if they're trying to kill her or they're just really cute. So it kind of goes back and forth. That would be mine right now.
I mean, I wrote a whole series about it, Bookish Boyfriends,
Right.
truly about all the literary characters I wish were my human boyfriends. So yeah, mine tend to be on classics. So, you know, Darcy and Gilbert and Laurie, but absolutely. And I think that's one of the things I look for in a book is, you know, that hero that is swoony. So absolutely.
Well, I'm
laughing. Do you see Shannon has posted in the chat? She wants Tiffany you to post the video of you hitting the girl at the ballet recital, and I need to post. I know I have the photo of me in my regular shoes. I will.
That's amazing. I actually hid the chat the whole time because I get very distracted. I have this big of attention span. Chrissy, can we get you to pick one of those people to be the winner? Because you probably have a list of questioners, and I have that hidden.
I would be happy to. Do you want to do that live now?
Or we can do it afterwards, but we will need that person to be able to contact us. So I will post it on my Instagram story. Yeah, so it's just Tiffany Schmidt on Instagram, and you can go to there and see if you are the winner.
Let's do
work?
that.
Does that make sense, Dan?
I want
That's
everyone to
good.
go to Tiffany on Instagram.
Okay, and they can just let one of us know.
Yes, perfect. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, for your questions, and of course, Tiffany and Jen, thank you for joining us. It's always so much fun. It's so much fun.
Can't wait to see you and come to the store in person. Thank you for having me with Tiffany. I cannot wait
so much
to read I'm Dreaming of a Wyatt Christmas.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. If we can't get together in person, this is the best next thing. And thank you to everyone who came. And thank you to Doyle's 10 Bookshop. So thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to mention for the drawing, they have to comment when we post the video, this event on our YouTube channel. It's commenting on that YouTube video, not commenting here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just wanted everyone
or
to be clear
we'll
about
pick
that.
one, someone who asked a question tonight, and then the second will be someone who comments once it's posted.
Yes. So I'll be putting the video up tonight. If anyone here watching wants to go comment on that video, then I'll send Tiffany the name of the first one who comments on YouTube, which is a thing. All right. Well, thank you again. I hope you both have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.